Today's guest has made history for the Lakers way before LeBron did. Joining me now is Coy Spooner, a decorated DLB athlete now at the Coast Guard. We're going to get into all of that in just a few minutes. But first, what drew you to both football and wrestling from a young age, Coy?
I would say what drew me to football and wrestling at a young age was my dad's involvement as a coach in both football and wrestling. So from the time that I was born, I was definitely exposed to both football and wrestling, and that kind of just sparked my interest. And we spent a lot of time at sporting events and at sporting practices. So as a young kid, I kind of looked up to those guys and wanted to be like the athletes that my dad coached. So that's what threw me into the wrestling and football.
What was it like being coached by your dad, maybe at different age levels? You know, when you were first getting started, everybody wants to have fun and it's broad, and then maybe things get more serious as you get maybe to like high school.
Absolutely. So like as a younger kid, I don't think I really understood it, because it was kind of, parents just helped out all the time, especially for DLB because we're a smaller school. So it didn't really seem odd to me as a kid or seem special in any way. I guess it was just like, oh yeah, my dad is helping out. And then as I got older, I kind of started to see more of a bond in it. Is that I had a coach and a dad all in one. So there was the transition age for me probably was junior high, where I realized that some kids go home and their parents ask how practice was, and they could tell them whatever they wanted, whereas I had my dad in the vehicle, so it was very sometimes it was still coach and athlete time on the way home, which was a good thing. It pushed me to be better, but there was sometimes that you wanted parent to be your coach, and sometimes you wanted your coach to be your parent. So it's definitely created a different dynamic, and as I became older, I really started to appreciate it, and I really grew to like it, because there's just a special bond that you have when you're a coach's kid. So
how would your career maybe be different if your dad wasn't your coach?
To be honest, I probably wouldn't have been as motivated if my dad wasn't my coach or didn't help coach, because it was that having him always around, kind of to see what you do every day. You want to make him proud every day, or I wanted to make him proud every day. So for me, that motivated me every day to work hard, to always get a workout in or do something to get better. So it was like if you had your coach standing in your room all the time, how would you want your coach to see you? So for me, I always wanted my dad to see that I was dedicated and putting in hard work. So it motivated me to do that, and that's what ultimately led to me being a successful high school athlete.
Would you say that was the biggest lesson he tried to get across to you, or was it something else?
My dad was it wasn't really put on by him. He didn't really say that. He taught me how to work hard by strictly showing example, but he wasn't like, oh, you should get up and work out, or you should go do this. It was more that was more brought on by me, just because I never wanted to let him down. So, but he never told me that I had to do things, and he always told me that if I didn't want to wrestle or play football anymore, if I didn't find enjoyment in that I could quit at any time. So that was kind of a lot of kids probably don't think that my dad would say that to me, but that is the truth. And it was more of, I just didn't want to let him down. I just wanted to make him proud. So that was pretty much my main motivation in a lot of the sporting things I did.
Do you think it's kind of surprising maybe to some that your parent, while being supportive, would totally get that, go ahead and quit if you want to, but that you were still motivated even though, they weren't giving you, pressure 100%,
Yeah, I think definitely some kids would would think that, and especially because my dad can be a very intense coach and he demands the best out of you at all times. So for a lot of kids, they would think that, that was the craziest thing I've ever heard. And I always kept that in mind too. So that kind of pushed me to be like, I wasn't in sports because my dad wanted me to be in sports, obviously, but he wasn't like forcing me to be in sports. So it's kind of like I learned how to appreciate football and appreciate wrestling more because I didn't feel pressure to do it. I was wrestling and I was playing football because I wanted to, because I enjoyed to do it. So
you're going to be a college athlete next, and we're going to deep dive into that a little bit later. But just within the sense of your dad being the coach and you guys just obviously bouncing a lot of ideas back and forth for you to get better. Now that you're at the Coast Guard here, have you guys talked a lot since you've been on campus? Do you anticipate once you get into your season that you'll get a bunch of calls or your family will be there a lot, or what?
Definitely. I'll definitely get a lot of support from my family while I'm here for things, and no doubt I'll go to my dad for like some extra tips and tricks when it comes down to the wrestling season and what I need to do, and there'll probably be a lot of calls. But it's a little different transition because I've had my dad as a coach for a long time now, so moving into college atmosphere where it's a lot more demanding than high school, especially on top of schooling at the academy and military training at the academy. But the coaches here are very understanding, and just because I talk to my dad, it'll be like no disrespect to my college coaches, but it'll just be kind of like a little, like having a mentor on the side almost, and a parent all at once. So
that's awesome, man. So let's look back at some of the things that went down when you were a Laker, all right? I know this is a few years back, and it might have been like the early part of varsity or even you were just watching it. But what was it like being around the football team when it went to the Dakota Bowl in 2016?
Going to the state championship as a freshman was definitely that was my first experience as a high school athlete. I've been varsity for wrestling when I was in junior high, but never fully experienced the high school athlete aspect. So that being my first high school athletics experience was definitely exciting. And even though I didn't get to play much, or I played probably a large role in practice, but not in games. So I learned at that point that it was to be a follower, and there was a lot of watching. I didn't really get to put any of my talents on display, really out for any of the public to see. But it definitely taught me to be a follower, and I got to see how I wanted to be a leader, how I wanted to be a player. So it was a good year for me where there was just a lot of observing and learning. And going to the Dakota Bowl that first year was motivating for the next years, even though we never made it back there, to get that experience that only two teams in single A North Dakota football get to experience, and we were one of those that year. And it was definitely a very memorable moment for me.
Talking about another guy that has had the experience with DLB football to move right on up is my buddy Taylor Teske. At the time of this taping here, Lakers sit at 1-1. In case you were too busy with basic, I'll let you know they shut out Botno 18-0 in week 1, and then lost to Rugby last night 24-8. And there's a couple more games between now and when this is going to air here in early September. But still, as we get into region play, what are your thoughts on the Lakers this year?
Yeah, I've actually had a little bit of contact with both Coach Teske and some of the players on the team, because I definitely created some bonds that will probably last a lifetime with the coaches at DLB and also the students and athletes. So, I think that they have the ability to be successful, and I think that Coach Teske will do a great job with him. He's very dedicated. He's very, very has a high football IQ for sure. And I think that it's just going to take take a little bit of time for them to maybe find their leaders and come together as a team where everybody knows their own role and everybody trusts their teammates. If they trust their teammates and everybody plays the role that they're supposed to, and they let Coach Teske and the other coaches coach, and they trust in their coaches, I think they can have some success this year.
If you're still staying tight with them right now, have they invited you into making a motivational Zoom call or anything like that during camp or the season?
They have not yet, but I would definitely be willing to do that, and there will probably be some point for football or wrestling. I maybe have a conversation with the football team or the wrestling team or something like that for sure.
Sweet. So you said when your dad was coaching you, maybe things started to feel different going into junior high, just ramping up the competition and stuff. So when did you think you had the potential to be a college wrestler?
I knew from a very young age, it was probably around 6th or 7th grade, that I wanted to be a collegiate athlete just because I wanted to experience both academics and athletics at the next level. And at first, it was I wanted to be a D1 wrestler, and my dream college was Oklahoma State when I was in junior high, and I wanted to go there and wrestle. So that was kind of what started it out, just because I love the competition aspect of all sports, and when it gets up to college, it's just like everybody is there because they want to be there. So sometimes you get in high school, which there's nothing wrong with it, but there's the kids that are there just to be a part of a sport because they enjoy it. They're they like to be with their friends. They like to do serve for one common purpose. Like football would be to win games, or they want to make the playoffs or whatever it is. And that's kind of what they work for. And then you get to college, and most college athletes are there because they want to be All-Americans or national champions. So that was kind of you're always looking to get better at college, and you're with the highest level people in the country. So that was kind of what drove me to be a collegiate athlete. So just that next level of competition.
Do you have a rough idea of what your high school record was in the last 2 years?
I believe I can't remember if I hit 200 wins or not, and then my losses were probably around 60, 70, somewhere in there.
But towards the end, you were undefeated, right?
Yes, sir.
There we go. So, ballparking it maybe in the last two, 80-0 or something?
88-0 in the last 2 seasons.
See, I knew you knew it exactly. That's what I was getting at for sure. So, despite that, did you have any nerves going into state?
My senior year, I didn't really have any nerves going into state. Wrestling is my passion, so I never felt forced to have to wrestle, and I loved the competition. I loved to go out for 6 minutes and just battle it out on the mat. And towards the end of my high school wrestling career, I never felt nervous to really step on the mat against anybody, and I enjoyed wrestling. Sometimes I would stay. I would stretch matches out if I could sometimes, just because I didn't want to get off the mat. So the only match for state that I ever got nervous for was semifinals, and I got nervous for semifinals every tournament, and it didn't matter what tournament it was my junior and senior year. So that was the only match that I got a little bit nervous for. But once I stepped on the mat, usually everything just turned off and I just wrestled. So
you would actually sooner compete for 30 seconds and just pin the guy, though, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Did you expect to go undefeated at some point in your varsity career? I know you probably had lofty goals for yourself, but was that kind of a natural thing given that you wanted to play at the next level anyway?
It was never. So even though I I never ever set a goal for myself to be an undefeated wrestler. I set goals for myself to be a multiple-time state champ and multiple-time region champ, and I had many other goals like that. But never once did I put a goal down to be an undefeated wrestler. So doing it as a junior, it was really kind of like I didn't think that I could go undefeated until it was probably mid-January. I was like, oh wow, I might be able to go undefeated here. But it never my goal was never to be undefeated, because I always stressed that the only 2 tournaments that matter all year, the regional tournament and the state tournament. So I obviously wanted to win as many matches as possible, but it was never a goal of mine. And even coming back as a senior, I never set a goal. I had a goal board in my room, and I never wrote down on that board to be an undefeated wrestler, because I figured that if I lost a match, that would just be a lesson to me. So
that was that's the headline grab right there. Coy Spooner completely dismisses the Rumble and the Red tournament, says regional and state tournament are the only ones that matter.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there we go. So what was on the board over the course of time? Did things change as you got older?
Absolutely. So as an 8th grader, my goal was to be a state place winner, and I was a state place winner that year and a region champ, which was I never had as a goal until the end of the year. I rewrote my goals, and I wrote that I wanted to be a region champ, which was a big goal it was a big accomplishment for me. My 8th grade year was being a region champ and getting on the podium that year. And then as a freshman, it was to be a region champ and place 5th or higher. And that year I took 6th, so I didn't reach that goal. And my goal as a sophomore was to be a state champ and a region champ, and I ended up as a runner-up that year. So really the only year that I actually accomplished all my goals was as a junior and senior, to be a state champ and a region champ.
So obviously a lot of help is coming from the Lakers wrestlers and staff. They really build you up before you go out there. So I want to ask, who is your toughest competition, even in the practice room, to help you get better, and then when you were competing? Are you able to pick out a couple of guys for both of those?
Yes, sir. So in the practice room, definitely one of the kids that pushed me the hardest was Colton Bartuska, who came back and helped when I was so he graduated 2 years ahead of me, and he would come back and help. He was my practice partner most of my junior year. The other 2 competitors that really helped me as a sophomore in the room were Colton Miller and Caden Bradall, just because they just knew how to go, and they had a gas tank, and they could push me. And it was very competitive in the room as a sophomore with those guys. And then as a junior and senior year, I practiced a lot with the coaches, so I would go through 2 or 3 coaches practice and they would give me all kinds of different looks. So I got pretty much as a junior and senior, I had double reps of everyone else in practice, just because I practiced with the coaches. When it came down to drilling, it was me going the whole time, and they would just be my partner. So I practiced Coach Zeitz, Coach Ibach, my dad, and Derek Lee, who helps coach out there also now. They all contributed a lot to my success my final years.
So, when you got to compete, there was never any Rocky versus the Russian guy with Coy Spooner? You didn't really identify with anybody?
On the mat, definitely my senior year, the most fun match for me was against Corbin Okeson, who I had wrestled multiple times in off season. And also as a senior, I went into the minor high room a couple times to wrestle Jacob Carmichael, who I continued to wrestle with in the off season, and I wrestled between my junior and senior year with. they're both, very, very distinguished North Dakota wrestlers this past year. And they definitely pushed me to be better. As a younger kid, I had a lot more kids who definitely pushed me. My sophomore year was very competitive with a kid from Bowman County that I would always lose to by a point or two, and then I beat to make the state semifinals as a sophomore, or as a freshman. I wrestled the kid from Bowman County, and then as a ninth grader and my seventh and eighth grade years, there was multiple kids that I went back and forth with and kind of had that rivalry with, but they pushed me to be better, and I maybe didn't respect it at the time until I probably got to a junior or senior year, where I actually respected that and appreciated that those guys pushed me to perform at my best level in order to beat them. So,
how important is it to have an off-season regiment designed for the sport of wrestling, because it takes place, obviously, after the season can be over, and then you have football in between? How does that work?
Yeah, so off-season wrestling, I think, is one of the most important things to being successful in wrestling, because I put off-season wrestling more important than conditioning or lifting, because you can't mimic wrestling by anything other than wrestling. So for me, I would attend camps every summer, which was a big thing for me, just being able to get out of North Dakota to see the other styles of wrestling. I went to J-Rob multiple times, and then I went down to an Oklahoma State camp, which was just you just get to see a lot of different styles, see how people wrestle, and it kind of forces you to be better. You got to adapt and overcome, and especially just with if I could give advice to the wrestlers in North Dakota, is just finding kids from around your area to wrestle with, 2 or 3 times a week. It doesn't have to be a lot. You can just wrestle for an hour and a half, hard practice with them, get some just the movements down when you're in high school, and it really it helps a lot. And that would be my one advice for the wrestlers in North Dakota, is just find those kids in the area who want to get better, and who are going to push you, the kids who are motivated, and you're going to go up together. So
that's what I wanted to ask too, because we touched on a lot of where you've been as a prep wrestler and what you've accomplished, but just from a qualitative and not a quantitative standpoint, how would you describe your wrestling style? Basic terms.
For me, I wrestle a very just controlling and dominant style. For a lot of people, I would probably be a boring wrestler to watch, because there's not a lot of big show, or there's not a lot of moves. It's just I just stay in good position, create my angles, move my feet, do the little things that eventually transit over to points on the board, and at the end of the match, I get my hand raised. And I was never one to stress about, I have to pin this kid, or I have to major this kid because I'm the number 1 seed, or anything like that. To me, a win was a win. You got to win the pretty ones. You got to win the ugly ones. So I never stressed about I have to go pin this kid. It was obviously my goal to pin kids, but I didn't put so much emphasis on that. It's just I wrestle a very controlling style, and it's boring to watch, but it's dominant. And sometimes it takes someone who's wrestled before to maybe look at my style and really break it down and appreciate it. To just the naked eye, I'm a boring wrestler, but sometimes boring is the best way to win. So
That's fair. Somebody that goes 88-0 tends to be controlling and dominant. Very good.
yes, sir.
Let's talk about this. How much did your frame help you wrestling at 195? You're not my size. You're more of like the slender man variety.
Yes, sir. For a lot of people still think, even when I'm at the academy, that I should be a basketball player just because of how I'm built. But I never, maybe as a junior high kid, I saw it as a disadvantage to be so tall. And but over time, I was really pushed by Coach Zietz to wrestle in a low stance, and eventually when I was probably a sophomore, I really started to see that my length was kind of an advantage. And during my junior or senior year, I think I kind of changed the way people saw wrestling. And definitely there was a lot of kids who looked at me and saw that I was tall and definitely not the typical wrestler build, but I was very dominant with my thing. And even my dad has said that it kind of, for him as a coaching standpoint, he was always one to believe that like taller kids were put at a disadvantage. And then over his coaching career, over his time coaching me, he was able to see how that length can be used as an extreme advantage, and you can be very successful with it. So he always told me that length is strength, just because I have a lot more leverage on kids because I'm taller, and I can keep people way better on my feet. And there's a lot of advantages to being tall and being a wrestler. So
if I was coaching you, I would say that the length is strength because you just keep beating kids. I would just base it on that, Coy. Just as a side note here, you mentioned it for a second, and obviously the sports seasons clash, but how good are you at basketball?
Well, I think I would probably be up for the worst basketball player in North Dakota. I don't know if I would be it, but I would be very close to the worst basketball player in North Dakota.
All right, so it's pretty cut and dry there, an easy choice to stay wrestling then. So,
yep.
You mentioned a couple things already from different guys, but how much did you learn from your high school wrestling coaches, other than your dad, just considering how tiny Kellen Zietz is?
Yes, I learned a lot from Coach Ibach, Coach Zietz, Colton Bartuska, and Derek Lee. They all taught me a lot in my wrestling career. Even though that my dad was the coach, there was still a lot of other coaching from Coach Zietz and Coach Ibach. They were very helpful to me, and even sometimes there were times where my dad stepped back and they were my coaches for a while, and my dad would step back, out of the picture. So I definitely spent time with those guys too, and Coach Zietz really helped me to be in my younger years when I was a lighter wrestler, especially my 8th grade, freshman and sophomore year. Coach Zietz really pushed me to be a better wrestler on my feet, just from wrestling with him in practice. And then Coach Ibach was always very helpful in a lot of just the small technicalities of wrestling. So that helped a lot. And Colton Bartuska and Derek Lee, they kind of all gave little tips and tricks when we would be wrestling that are the little things that add up to wins in the end. So every one of them helped me a lot, all with a different aspect of my wrestling success. So
I wanted to give a mention to one of your other buddies that you had brought up, Colton Miller here. Now, you guys, as a wrestling team, and it's pretty typical for most Class B, you only have maybe 1 or 2 home duels and stuff, and if I can't make it, sometimes it's tough to get video. So I remember doing like a DLB preview one time, and I had to go back into the archives, and Colton was out of school for probably a couple of years, and so we used the video, and Colton comments on Facebook, he's like, what the heck, I graduated like so far back, some great news or whatever, and I was a little embarrassed, and I saw him at a hockey game. I was like, yeah, sorry, man.
Yeah.
But he's like, yeah, dude. I mean, I just think of it as like one last chance to shine that you didn't really expect. That'll probably happen to you, Coy, if I need some old videos. So you can look forward to that as
Perfect.
as you're away from home here. So let's just look within the scope of just your accomplishments within this program. You've done stuff that this program hasn't seen before. So in that sense, what does it mean for you to win back-to-back state and be that first Laker?
Yeah, it was definitely a goal of mine to, as a younger kid, was just to put my name on that board twice at the in the first place state champion box, and I didn't really think of anything else, I guess, until I got to my junior year. I kind of realized that maybe I was doing it, that the bigger motivation behind me wanting to be a state champ was not just to have my name on the board. It was to set an example for others. And especially as my senior year, I really saw that I broke all the records I did, and I set all the records I did just for a goal for the future DLB wrestlers to beat. I hope that I'm not the first and last two-time state champ for the DLB Lakers. I'm a two-time state champion, so somebody can beat that record, and we can have a three-time state champion at DLB. I didn't go a season without getting taken down just to have my name up there. I hope that somebody can, have more takedowns than me and not get taken down in a season as well. So everything I did was just to set that high standard for the future wrestlers of the DLB program, and I hope that motivates some of the future wrestlers as a mark they want to beat.
You can even include football in this too. Tell me how, on a typical practice, how would you be a leader and help bring other guys along and help them get better?
Yeah, so I was I knew how to push people, and I definitely knew how to what motivated every person, but I didn't do it by just standing on the sidelines and yelling that, or telling them to run faster, or in wrestling practice telling them to lift more weight or anything like that while I was just sitting down. I really tried to lead by example, as well as giving them extra motivation, so that when they saw me doing it, when they saw me hitting a sprint hard, and I told them to hit a sprint hard, then they saw that if I was giving 100%, they should also give 100% too. So that was kind of always my leading philosophy, is that I always wanted to lead with them. I never wanted to lead from the top, yelling down at them, really. I wanted to, be in there with them, doing the work with them, and just giving them the extra motivation to really push them to be their best.
Coy, we've talked a lot about you trying to lead players, motivate, work hard yourself to accomplish a lot of big things, but tell me about some times where you could just be one of the guys and just hang out and have fun with your teammates and friends. Just, hi, I'm Coy. I just happen to be a good wrestler,
Absolutely. So that's definitely, I think that I can flip the switch as good as anyone, from being the person that can just kick back and have a good time to the person that can turn it on in the practice room and on the football field and things like that. And that's something that I find very important. And even at the academy now, being able to flip the switch from hanging out with your friends to going to a military training where you're expected to be very, very squared away, or very braced up, things like that, in military brace. So, and during practice, even though there was, it was intense and we needed to get things done, I always knew how to lighten up the mood a little bit, and I wanted to make it enjoyable for everyone too, while still, pushing them to be their best. You have to have the balance to push people to be their best while having fun with it too, because otherwise people will just become burnt out. So I always made sure that when I was leading, we would take breaks just to kick back and put some smiles on people's face and make them laugh. And that's an important part of being in anything that's demanding, sports, school, even like the life I live at the academy. If you don't relax and have some fun and take time to smile and laugh, I mean, you'll just burn yourself out and run yourself down. So there was always that. I always knew how to flip the switch during my high school leadership so I could, lead and we could get things done, but also we could have fun and take time to just enjoy what was around us.
Yeah, I always kind of wonder that these wrestlers are stuck up in their padded square rooms all winter long and they don't go insane or whatever. It's a smooth transition from being a DLB Laker and then wrestling for the Coast Guard, of course, of all places. What made you want to go there?
So going to the academy was definitely something that was far out for a kid from North Dakota for sure. But I liked the coaches over here for wrestling, and going to the Coast Guard Academy was kind of it was something far out for me, and I knew I wanted to I wanted to push myself after high school to be out of my comfort zone because I wanted to grow as a person. So the Coast Guard Academy kind of offered all those opportunities for me to get out of my comfort zone completely and be exposed to something that I've, in a lot of aspects, never been exposed to. And with that has already came a lot of growth. I've had many failures here, and I've made many mistakes here, but every one of those mistakes and every one of those failures over here I've learned from. And even over the past 6 weeks for basic training and then this last 2 weeks of schooling, I've seen myself grow a lot, and it's kind of having that growth mindset here. So,
how easy is it for you guys to do laundry with everyone wearing white, or is that just the Navy?
So we have to wear all blue.
Okay.
And laundry isn't too bad. All of our names are on things, so everything usually stays pretty sorted out. But
fantastic. So what was basic training like for you? And maybe this might tie into what you've talked about, just kind of getting back up after having, I don't even know how you define a failure. So can you just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So when the last 7 weeks of basic training was extremely mentally demanding. For me, I was definitely in very good physical shape before I came here. So physically, it was demanding at points, but it wasn't, it didn't necessarily like run me down or anything like that physically. But mentally, there was a lot of new things we had to take in. We had to make time objectives for everything that were demanding to the point that you would fail them all the time. So, I mean, I failed time objectives all the time over here. And even when I would make a time objective, it was you never got rewarded here for doing well, because your job is to do well here. So that was something that was probably the hardest thing for me over the training period, is that going from high school, where I was definitely told like, hey, good job for your doing good, or for working hard. Whereas when it came here, it was, if I was doing good, that was my job. And when you weren't doing good, then you got called out. So you only got called out when you did bad, and that was something that was just hard for me to take in. And it was hard for a lot of kids here, because everyone that's at the academy is very successful in high school, and then they go to being the lowest ranking member in the Coast Guard. So it's a switch that's very hard for a lot of people. So
yeah, I mean, that's crazy how like you have. I mean, it's the same story for everybody. How they can be so successful in like they find this way to, I don't know if it's a breakdown or anything like that, but they definitely tell you there's more that you can accomplish, right?
Absolutely. And the one thing from that, though, is that over the summer I really saw that they did that just to, demand the most out of you at every second of the day. They demanded your best. And you basically pushed yourself to limits that you didn't think you could go past. So I appreciated that, and coming in from day 01 of our summer training, where I knew pretty much nothing about military bearing or anything like that, to the last day when I was felt like very very squared away. I felt good about where I was at. I felt like I fit in the military. I knew that how to conduct myself, and so it was just I was able to see a lot of growth from myself over those 6 weeks of training. So
we're not going to screw up one of your time objectives by taking almost an hour to talk, are we, Coy?
No, sir.
Okay.
I have all day today.
Don't want to get you in trouble. Okay. So when you're just starting at the academy right now, but where do you want your future to go after this academy? I mean, what are your goals?
Absolutely. So after I get out of the academy, I'll be an ensign in the Coast Guard, which will be a officer rank 1. So I'll be expected to lead people and do things like that in the Coast Guard. So I'll be leading the interesting thing, or kind of one of the cool dynamics about the academy, is that when you get out, I will be, for example, I'll be 22 years old, and I will be leading enlisted members like chiefs who have been serving for over 20 years, and I will be in charge of them. So that's kind of, the academy is very demanding for that reason, because you're expected to lead people who have been in the Coast Guard for almost 5 times the length that you've been in the Coast Guard. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. And my first tour, I want to do something that's kind of I kind of want to get out and see all kinds of stuff. So I'd like to go to a hot spot of drug interdiction, so somewhere either on the West Coast in California or down in Miami, and I'd like to get trained as a boarding officer, so I could board ships and board vessels to deal with drug interdiction and things like that.
That's awesome, man. So you're just starting out, so as you finish your academy training, you might be more comfortable with that prospect. But yeah, what's it going to be like being able to lead these guys that are older than you? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about that. For example, in 4 years, I could be the commanding executive officer of a ship, so I could be the second in charge of a ship as a 22-year-old kid. So that's it's kind of a hard thing to take in, but I definitely trust in the academy, and that's what the academy builds, is leaders. So after 4 years of being over here, they're going to train you to be able to lead pretty much anyone. So I kind of look forward to this next 4 years, and I know that if I trust in the process here, that I will be a very successful officer in the Coast Guard.
What do you take from your experience with the Lakers that's going to help you in the years to come with the Coast Guard?
Yeah, I think that just because I was able to, was able to be I was a leader in a lot of things at DLB, and that's just helped me. That's really what helped me get in here. I would say is my strongest point in my application was definitely my leadership. So being able to be in a lot of different leadership positions throughout my time at DLB being a captain of the football team, the wrestling team, the track team, being involved in student council, and as a class officer, just really helped me come out of my shell, I would say, and become a successful leader. Because definitely when I was younger in high school, I was kind of shy. I was kind of afraid to speak up, say what I wanted to say. And over time, I really just became comfortable with having my thoughts and being able to lead others. And I always wanted to lead others in a very inclusive way. I wanted everybody to be included. And I learned how to do that at DeLac, so it kind of served as my my practice for over here. So
Once you're done with this, you're going to have a lot of responsibility. So when you first apply, do you literally just send in for it, or do they interview you? What's that process like?
So the application process is very, very complex to any academy. So for mine, or to get into the Coast Guard Academy, I had to write 4 essays that have to be in between a certain length, all which are all related to leadership or some kind of skill that you have. And then after that, you have to do the physical fitness exam, testing how in shape you are. And then after that, it comes down to an interview with a representative from the academy, and then they put up your application, as well as you need letters of recommendation from, I believe, 5 people. So that's something you need. And then they put up your application in front of some board members of the academy, and you go from there whether you're going to be accepted or not. And for the other academies, you have to do an interview to get a nomination from a representative or senator. So,
did you feel more nervous going into a state semifinal or your guard interview?
I would probably say probably my state semifinals.
Well, that's good, but, at least for now anyway.
I was never too worried about my interviews because I always knew that I could talk, and I always consider myself to be a genuine person. So that was I was never afraid to sit down and interview with someone. But
very good. Yeah, well, you're going strong today, Coy. That's for sure, man. We're going to be definitely stay in touch, man. We wish you the best with the academy and all you still have left to accomplish. And, just come back to DLB a ton, man. I'm sure you will when you get the chance, right?
Absolutely.
All right, very good. That's Coy Spooner out of DLB. Thank you for the time, man.
Thanks, sir.